Jim, thank you for that warm introduction, not just of me, but of Megan, who is the very first person I brought with me when I came here to Congress in 2008, and blessed to still have her with me. Thank you for mentioning her, and she never rests. She's always fighting to make sure we're taking care of our business. And of course, next week you have Julia Letlow. We call her the Steel Magnolia. She's the rock of our delegation, and a wonderful, wonderful person. Somebody who's going to be real involved in this new Congress, dealing with some of the things that we ran on in the Commitment to America. Dan Newhouse, myself, all of our members. We had talked during the campaign about a number of things that we wanted to do to get our country back on track. And you could talk about the problems and say we're against the things that were happening, the trillions in spending, the mountains in debt, the new rules, regulations that were crushing our economy. We all knew what the problems were out there. We could have just sat back and said we could win the majority on that, but we said, no, let's go further. Let's actually talk about what we would do if we got the majority in the House. And so we laid it out. We laid out a bold conservative agenda. People responded. We got some phenomenal new members of Congress, and I'm sure some of you have met a lot of these new members, and you'll continue to meet them because we got some rock stars to join us in this fight. And so as majority leader, the funnest part of the job is that I get to work with not only all of our members, but all of our chairmen to actually bring bills to the floor to address these problems. And so I laid out very early to the new chairman that we made commitments to not only America, to ourselves, and it's time we deliver. We are going to actually bring all of those bills to the floor. Let's work in committee. I don't think a lot of you have seen committees work in a long time. So we started this new Congress. We had a few extra days where we talked about the rules of the House and spent a few extra days to make sure we got it right. And so Speaker Kevin McCarthy is seasoned and ready to go now, but we are more focused than I think we've been in a long time on what the mission is. And it's a very serious mission. And so we empowered the committees to do work like we haven't seen them do in a long time. And in fact, you couldn't see them because most of them were not meeting in person. They were meeting virtually. You cannot accomplish the important things you have to do virtually. You've got to be in person. There is a dynamic. And for as much as everybody outside of Washington wants to think that every day is a food fight and every Republican is against every Democrat, actually that's not the case. A lot of the things we want to do, you find people along the way on the other side that want to do it as well. It's just you're not doing that if you're remotely and you're on these Brady box screens and you can't offer amendments. You can't go talk to a person and say, look, why don't we try to tweak it this way and then let's actually get a better product. And so we ended proxy voting. You actually have to show up to work. It's going to, I think, a lot of the rules open up the process and allow Congress to work better and allow the public to be more engaged. Let the public not only see what we're doing, but have buy-in, actually know that they can reach out to their own member of Congress, even if they're not on that committee, even if they're a freshman that just got elected a few months ago, and that member can now offer an amendment. We had over 100 amendments offered last week on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve bill. It was the first time in 7 years that Congress has had an open rule. And we did 2-minute votes. Steve Womack was in the chair, if you didn't see that first series. And boom, 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 we went through about 30 votes in about 90 minutes. And I think everybody, not just Republicans, Democrats, were coming up saying, this is really good to see this institution work again and start seeing the process opening up again. And so I think a lot of people are excited on our side. I think some Democrats are going to be excited, too, that some of the problems that even they wanted to confront that they weren't able to, we're finally going to do. And look, early off, the press called all of this partisan. We brought a bill to the floor our second week to say, if the president raised the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, this is our national asset that's supposed to be a piggy bank, an area of last resort if there's some disruption in oil markets, you have that there to make sure that we can go and address the needs of our country in the short term. Instead, it's been rated over 40% to mask policies that are actually bad for American energy. So we said, look, you can't use this to sell off like some of it was sold to China. We said, you can't use it to sell to China. Press said it's going to be a partisan exercise. A majority of Democrats voted with us on the bill. You're seeing that on some of the other bills, too. We laid out last week that most of America has, by the way, gotten back to work. Most of America has recognized, while there is still COVID out there, there's a lot of other things out there too, but there's a real world that we've got to get back to, and we cannot hide behind a public health emergency or a COVID declaration to keep things shut down, to keep kids shut out of school. We have got to get people back to their lives. And so we said, we're going to bring a resolution to end the public health emergency. Again, we're criticized. This is a partisan exercise. It's futile. What does it matter? Democrats in the Senate aren't going to do it. The president's not going to do it. And lo and behold, yesterday, the president announced that he will end the COVID emergency. And, he said he's going to wait till May. We're still working on pushing him up a little bit. And, it's January, it's February. We can do it now. But I think you're now starting to see that the administration is recognizing there's a partner that they're going to either have to work with or fight with, but we're not going to slow down. We know the big challenges that the country's facing. We got elected, we won a majority on confronting those problems. And so we're going to be bringing bills to restore energy security in America. Let's make sure that we can take care of our own needs. We do not have to be reliant on foreign countries for our energy, and we're going to show the country how to do it by bringing good, thoughtful legislation to the floor. Border security is such a major problem. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. When you've had more people than the entire state of New Mexico come into our country illegally just in the last 2 years, those are just the ones we know of. You can't even tell me how many people are on the terrorist watch list. It's in the dozens how many we've caught who have come across our border. The real big thing that probably isn't as widely reported that should be is every day in America, more than 300 young people are dying due to fentanyl and other drug overdoses because of drugs coming across our southern border. The drug cartels of Mexico have operational control over America's southern border. The whole country should be outraged about that. The press should be reporting it every day. I mean, think about it. If a plane fell out of the sky every single day, over 300 people died from that crash yesterday, the one today, there's going to be another one. We would shut everything down and say, we better figure out what's going on and stop it from happening. Yet every day in America, today it's going to happen. Over 300 young people will die from fentanyl, and nothing's being done about it. And so we're going to bring a package to address that serious, serious problem. You saw with education, with schools being shut down, millions of kids. We'll never make that up. The data's out there. It's crystal clear what happened, but it should have never happened. And so we are going to bring forward, as Julia Letlow will hopefully talk about, because it's going to be her bill, a Parents' Bill of Rights, to say parents actually have rights to see their curriculum. Sounds pretty basic, like why do you need an act of Congress? Like so many other things, unfortunately, we found out you do need an act of Congress because there were some school systems who were saying you as a parent can't see your kid's curriculum. You can't have the involvement. If you were showing up at a school board meeting, this Justice Department was trying to deem you a domestic terrorist if you were saying the wrong things at the school board meeting. We've seen their involvement in big tech shutting down views that they don't like. This is not how American government was envisioned or should work or should be accepted by any of us who believe in freedom. And so we're going to confront all of that, and I think it's going to be very healthy debates. And I think a lot of these debates are going to produce products that are very bipartisan. Obviously, on the last piece, we're in the middle of, or the beginning of, negotiations with the president on the debt ceiling. In fact, Speaker McCarthy will be meeting tomorrow with President Biden, the first conversation after the president was saying for weeks that he doesn't want to meet at all to talk about the spending problem, just give him more money to spend more money. The nation's credit card is maxed out. That's what the debt ceiling is, and this idea that you just raise the limit or just go get another credit card and go max that one out too is irresponsible. It's untenable to say we're not going to sit down and talk about it. Families do this all the time. Let's do this as well, and I think it's a healthy conversation that the country wants to have. Let's figure out how we can actually get Washington back on track and living in the same real world that regular folks live in every single day. They have to make tough decisions. It's time for us to start making smart decisions as well that focus on those families who are struggling. That's what you're going to see this next 2 years focused on. We are already off to a very busy start. I'm excited about it. Looking forward to even more fun weeks where we actually debate how to solve the country's problems and come together and then push those over to the Senate. Let's get the Senate to go take them up as well. So with that, always great to be with Ripon, and I think we have time for a few questions.
Okay, great, Steve. Thank you very much. Well, all of you are thinking of questions. One of the areas you didn't touch on is Ukraine funding. In the Republican conference and looking at the Democratic, is this something that can bring the two conferences together? Where do you think that's going to go?
You know, there's been a lot of talk about that. A lot of funding has gone over, and we support Ukraine's fight against Russia, what Russia has done, the atrocities, the war crimes. You know, many of us have been to that region and seen what's really going on. Obviously, there's some questions about, is all the money really focused on Ukraine when you see 40, 50 billion? Clearly not all of that is aid to Ukraine. And so the questions that we've raised are, you know, where can we get some scrutiny, some accounting to know, is it going the way it's intended? You've seen even internally within Ukraine, there's been questions of, you know, is America even sending them the things that they actually need? You know, sending money and military equipment is one thing, but is it the right equipment? And so you've seen even a sharper focus on, you know, okay, we're sending these things, but we need these things. Tanks are the latest. Do we send fighters, fighter jets? So those are the sort of questions that we've been raising. Is the money being spent properly? And let's make sure that they have the tools to actually go defend and defeat the Russians who are committing these crimes. But ultimately, let's make sure the taxpayers also are getting an account of what really is out there.
Good. Thank you, Steve. Mr. Minister, right over here. Here's our microphone.
Thank you very much, Leader Scalise. Just briefly to appreciate your support to the alliance, U.S.-Japan alliance, and my question relates to the regional security and also broader issue. Select Committee on China. We are very excited to see the focus on this issue. I'd like to hear from you, what are the priorities that you think this committee can push forward, and what are the legislation related to China that you'd like to see on the floor? China's challenge can be broad range from national security, human rights, chips, and all the economic coercion. I'd like to see what are the things that you'd like to see and the roles of the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, and this just got established, the China Committee. It was a very bipartisan vote. Chairman Gallagher is already, I've talked to him, he's already got a plan for what he wants the committee to start getting into. And I think Hakeem Jeffries on the Democrat side is appointing people that are also interested in this focus. And it needs to be a bipartisan focus because we should all be concerned by the threat that the Chinese Communist Party faces. And that's really the mission of this committee, is to look at so many of the things, both from domestic concerns as well as internationally. You know, their movement around the world in many ways has gone unchecked. You know, we need to make sure not only that our military is aware, but we hear about intellectual property, we hear theft, we hear about so many other things, cyber threats. In America, there are a lot of concerns that entities related to the Chinese Communist Party are buying up land near military bases to spy on our military bases, buying up farmland to control the food supply, not only globally, but even in America. A lot of those things many Americans aren't even aware of, and other members of Congress aren't even aware of. It's about time we actually start looking into it, because it is both for national and international security. But, you know, it starts at home. Let's start looking at what's really happening out there. There are a lot of concerns that we have that have just gone unchecked for too long, and they're not sitting quietly. They're making active moves all around the world, including in the United States, and we better be not only aware of it, but being prepared to deal with it, and that's what this committee is selected to do. Some of the recommendations that they will make will involve legislative proposals to other committees outside of there. They don't have real jurisdiction for legislating, but for the committees that do, some of those committees have membership on the China Task Force, so that the committee, I think, is going to be really engaged on a number of fronts and then ultimately making recommendations to a lot of our standing committees to take action.